So now everyone is wide awake. Thank you, Morgan. 1 Samuel chapter 17. Oh, I wish we had more time. We could go through the whole of David's story. But I'm forced to summarize in some spots, forced to skip here and there, the less relevant things. Oh, good. Hey, Preston, could you throw the picture of Mrs. Graves up on the big screen so I can at least introduce your face, her face to you, if you have the means. Again, I wish there. That is Jeanette. She has green eyes. They can be scary. I've seen them with fire in them, fiery green eyes. That's, of course, my daughter and my other daughter-in-law, niece, Kelsey. Well, that's her. That is Jeanette. She's here in spirit. Wishes she could be here in person, but I wanted you to see her face anyway. And I tell her that you said hello. She has said hello to you. She sends her blessings. No, she said her love, not her blessing. Her love. That's kind of better than blessings. Okay, thank you guys. That's good. 1 Samuel chapter 17. This is a big chapter. We cannot summarize it. Verse 1, now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah, pitched between Shochoh and Azekah in Ephes Damim. Saul gave the men of Israel, Saul and the men of Israel gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them. That'd be like a stadium. That would be like a massive stadium. And it is. I've been there. I've been on the spot. It is very much like a great stadium. Spectators on either side, like they're up in the bleachers, up in the nosebleed section. There went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Well, of course it matters whose cubit you're using and whose span, but no matter whose cubit you're using, that is a giant, probably 9 feet tall. I don't know what that translates to meters. We built a life-size one for Vacation Bible School. We have an artist. She made it out of a frame with a rubber that looks like real flesh, real beard. And a young man wears stilts and wears this costume. You ought to see it. It's enormous. So I come about to his elbow. This is life size. He's enormous. So Goliath is a mutant. He's not somebody that just got good genetics. He is the product of a very sinister program, a very sinister attempt to try to create a hybrid. He's one of those who, like the Nephilim, or like the Anakim, or the Zumzim, or Zimzam, there's a number of names that they would go by different periods of time in Canaan. These giants existed. Goliath, imagine him walking back and forth, strutting in the valley, calling to the other mountain on the other side, inviting a challenger. And I bet he sounded weirder than me. His voice going, come, or whatever. I don't know how you sound like in Philistine. But it had to be scary, that weird voice echoing across the valley and up that hillside. The sound would travel unimpeded, blocked. The sound would just travel, his blasphemy. And he would blaspheme. He didn't just issue a challenge like some kind of a gentleman. He was down in that valley shouting up to Israel in Philistine in blasphemous terms. So he's a mutant. He's a giant, 6 cubits in a span. Verse 5 says, he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. The weight of the coat of mail was 5,000 shekels of brass. And by the way, in case you're interested in this, Joel Kramer, Expedition Bible, has one of his, on his YouTube channel, he's got one of his documentaries. They're in Philistine territory, what used to be Philistine territory. He has the actual archaeology. They actually have weaponry that is so massive it could only have belonged to a giant, a spearhead, which the modern archaeologists have assumed that it served some other purpose other than being a spearhead because it's so enormous. They explain away the spearhead and the other weaponry, but they cannot explain a coat of mail that is so enormous that 3 men could wear it. So just so you know, there is legitimate archaeology that verifies and validates the giants were in the land. And the equipment, some of it's still left behind on display in a museum in Israel. Verse 6 says, he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. And his spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them, why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants of Saul? Choose you a man and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then ye shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. Now he does this according to what we read repeatedly. Now when Saul and all the Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed. It wasn't just the words, it was the mutant that was speaking the words. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. All of Israel was dismayed and greatly afraid. Now, David, he was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. He had 8 sons. I like the way this is worded in the King James Version. And the man, he went among old men in the days of Saul. The man, Jesse, he went among old men in the days of Saul. That, my friends, my little brothers and sisters, is what I am doing at present. I go among old men in these days of Trump, whatever. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse, they went and followed Saul to the battle. The names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul, but David went and returned from Saul. Remember, he had that gig playing harp for the king. He left that and he went back to tend his father's sheep in Bethlehem. The Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. What a miserable standoff. What an absolute miserable scene. Neither side really wants to fight. And one Philistine mutant has created this stall, this stalemate, this is awful. And for 40 days they hear it, and for 40 days they see him. Well, verse 17 says, and Jesse said unto David his son, he said, take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp of thy brethren, to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench. As the host was going forth to the fight, there's no real fight, but they're going forth to it. They've had their pep rally. It says, and they shouted for the battle. So they're feeling very ambitious, feeling very perky. They're feeling very optimistic when they first go out. They shouted for the battle. And for Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David, he left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and he went into the army and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion of the Philistines of Gath, Goliath by name, now to the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. Okay, guys, tune in. David hears them, and he hears them for the first time. Everybody else has heard them. Day after day for 40 days. They're all still dismayed and greatly afraid. David, he's got fresher ears. And he arrives, and he hears this, and he is absolutely outraged. Look at this. Verse 24, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. David is an eyewitness to this reaction, this cowardice. The men of Israel said, have you seen this man that has come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up, and it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel, free of taxes. David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth the Philistine, and taketh away this reproach from Israel? What will be done? What exactly, let's review again. What is the reward? For whoever ends this reproach, whoever ends this shame, kills that mutant. For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should divide the armies of the living God? So David is outraged that God is being defied, that the God of Israel, Yahweh himself, is being, the living God is being defied. I submit to you that faith, which is what David has, faith allows us to see things from God's perspective. Faith allows us the wisdom of being able to see things from God's perspective. And seeing things from God's perspective by faith allows us also to share in God's passion, to sort of feel his feelings, his emotion. And David is ignited when he hears this. He is outraged. Because the guy saying it is no covenant with the true and living God. He is uncircumcised. He's not just getting personal here. He's talking about the fact that this Philistine does not have a covenant with a living God. Who is this? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? That he should do this, that he should talk like that. David's outraged. The people answered him, and after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness, King James Version, the naughtiness of thine heart. For thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? He challenges his brother's attack on him and his character. Now I'm sure Eliab, the eldest, is still a little angry, still a little resentful that the prophet sent by Yahweh passed over him and all his brothers and chose his youngest brother. He's still angry about that. He has envy in his heart. He's outraged that David is even there. When he hears him asking and inquiring, he goes off on him. He accuses him. But David comes right back to him and says, is there not a cause? That is, he's saying, am I not right? Am I wrong? He's asking essentially, is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and he spake after the same manner. That means Eliab's mouth was shut. To the question, is there not a cause? I can only imagine Eliab has to hang his head. So David asks others the same question. Is there not a cause? He spake after the same manner. Verse 30 says, and the people answered him again after the former manner. When the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. So someone got excited in that crowd of cowards and go, oh, we have an interested potential volunteer. And they ran that news quickly to Saul. Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, now let's remember that David is not head and shoulders above all the people. Saul is. But Saul is sitting down on his mobile, camp throne. But even sitting down, I'm certain that you could tell he was a very, very large man, but the very large man was still not in Goliath's league. Verse 32, David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. I wish we could be eyewitnesses to this, because this sincere, handsome, cute little guy comes to the tall, aging king and said, don't let anybody panic. I'll take care of this. The absurdity of it, that I'll take care of this, don't worry. Everybody can just stop being so sad. I'm here. I'll take care of it. I mean, it must have caused laughter. It must have, maybe laughter for some, maybe just more panic for everybody else because of what's at stake. Little dude, if you go down there and fight and you lose, we are agreeing to be slaves. This statement again, thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. The servant will go fight with him. Saul said to David, thou art not able to go. against the Philistine to fight with him? For thou art but a youth. I mean, you can see that. David's beard wasn't even legitimate yet. He's got a few little whiskers. You could just look at him and go, oh, look at you. You want to go fight. And Saul's answer is, you're just a kid. You're just a youth. He's been a warrior from his youth. Verse 34, David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him and slew him. That had to have sounded absolutely ridiculous, absolutely absurd. Maybe, just maybe, I'm just throwing this out, maybe it's possible that David has a couple of decent claw marks out of the deal, that he could pull up his sleeve, go, look, I'm telling you, I fought a lion. I killed the lion. He rose up against me. He did this. I had to kill him. A lion. Now, David just says, he doesn't give us any detail. He just said, I smote him. I smote him. Well, the shepherd carries around a weapon. It's a lot more like a club. Sometimes they would bind stone on the end of it, so it's more like a hammer. But the shepherd's rod is all that David likely had. He is equipped with a sling, you know that. And he's equipped with a rod. He doesn't seem to even have a blade. But all he tells us when it comes to details against these large predators, I smote him. That's it. Smote him and slew him. That is David saying, listen, this is not my first time fighting outside of my weight class. It's not my first time fighting outside of my life form class. I know I'm young, but I got a record. In verse 36, he said, thy servant, which is who David acknowledges himself to be, thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. That's David saying, I know that how this is going to end because I know what he's done. He has drawn God into this conflict. This mutant has invited the living God into this. He has defied the armies of the living God. David said, tomorrow, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. Saul said to him, he said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. Go, and the Lord be with thee. You go get him, son. Go get him. Yahweh be with you. I suppose if he's going to be with someone, he could be with any of us, right? I suppose he could be with me, but you volunteered. Yahweh be with you. Saul accepts this volunteer. You're going to wonder a lot of things about Saul. Perhaps at this point, Saul really actually does see just once again, despite the state that Saul is in, perhaps he has just a little tiny faith, because David has big faith. So Saul says, go for it, man. I want to be with you. Saul armed David with his armor, because he wasn't using it. And he put his helmet of brass upon his head, and he also armed him with his coat of mail. You try to picture that, because Saul is huge. I'm sure all of this gear is tailored for him, and he puts it on the little dude. And it must have looked ridiculous, I'm sure. And David doesn't have a mirror, but I'm sure he's walking around going, come on, I can't do this. That's a paraphrase. Not with this stuff. David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. He had not proved. He's like, I've got no experience with this stuff. This is not a day where we should be trying stuff out. No, what I need today are the things that I've already used, the stuff I used on the lion and the bear. So David said, I appreciate your gear, but trust me, I got to use the stuff that I know. Well, I have not proved them. I cannot go over these, for I have not proved them. And David put them back off him. My question to you, Christian, have you a history of battles? Do you have a history of putting to the test the sword of the Spirit? Have you? Do you have a past where God has proven his word to be the truth to you? Have you proven it in battle? Have you put it to the test and found that it is powerful? Is it Spurgeon who is quoted as saying, God's past faithfulness demands my present trust. Same God who came before you, the same God who came through for you before can be trusted to come through for you again. The power is the Lord's. May the Lord give you the opportunity to put his word to the test and prove it. Put it to the test and prove it. Verse 40, he took his staff in his hand and he chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. The Philistine came and drew near unto David, and the man that bore the shield went before him. When the Philistine looked out, when he looked about, it says here, and he saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of fair countenance. The giant hated David's cuteness. He was absolutely insulted that he's little and he's cute. He took offense. He was insulted by it. 40 days he's been going, give me a man, send me a man. And then out comes this little cute guy. And Goliath is like, what are you saying about me? You have offended me as a giant and as a person. He takes it real personal. He disdained him. I like the King James Version on this. He disdained him, for he was ruddy and of a fair countenance. He took it like, are you kidding me? You think that little of me? That you would send that little punk out of here? And Goliath is out of his mind over the cuteness of the challenger. He gets real ugly here. It says in verse 43, and the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? The giant goes, is that a stick? The giant is going, you use sticks on dogs. Are you calling me a dog? He takes it real personal. He gets seriously offended at the weapon. I submit to you that Goliath is not stable mentally. He's got some genetic issues. I think he's got some mental problems as well. Goliath is outraged that it's a little guy and that he's cute and he's got a stick. Is that a stick? I don't know, maybe we're wrong about his voice. Maybe he's not, is that a stick? Maybe he's like, is that a stick? I have no idea what mutants sound like. He's just outraged. He's like flipping out. It's a stick! And he just wants to loot. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. And the Philistine said, look at verse 44. He said to David, come to me and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. I'm going to feed you to the birds. And he meant it. It's not a figure of speech. Now people will say, siblings will say, I'm going to kill you. They don't mean it. He means it. He really, really means it. It's Goliath. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I want to tear you to pieces. He's probably like half crying. I'm going to tear you to pieces. I'm going to feed you to the birds. And the Philistine said to David, come to me. Come to me. Yeah. David is unfazed. And then said David to the Philistine, what did that sound like? I assure you, little Davy's voice wasn't like mine. What did it sound like? And you're up in the stands, way up in the, imagine, will you please for a moment, imagine if you are Eliab and your last exchange with your little brother was as hostile as his was. Next thing somebody comes to you and goes, he's down there, he's doing it, he's down there in the valley. Oh! And you're Eliab, you go, oh no. And people are having to hold you back because you're thinking you got to go get your crazy brother because he's going to get killed. He's going to bring disgrace to the whole family. Oh, can you imagine those brothers, Eliab, Aminadab, and Shammah, their eyeballs bugged out. And the mutants doing this, come to me. And then when that echo is finally done, the silence is interrupted by David. His squeaky little voice. Try to imagine it. David said to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield. I come against thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. Little bit, I mean, it must have sounded ridiculous. Just the two voices, and that echoes, and I'm telling you, everyone on the Israel side is going, oh dear God, help us. Oh, help. Everybody's praying prayers then. This does not look good. Can you imagine? And there's no announcer. In this corner, Goliath of Gath, coming in at 800 pounds. And in this corner, David of Bethlehem. It was just these two voices. There's no guy in the middle going, get ready to rumble. There was none of that. Just a mutant swearing and cursing in Philistine. And a little Jew kid going, prepare to die. He goes on. David goes on. This day the Lord will deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee. I'm just saying, there's a little voice going, I'm going to take your head off. I'm going to take your head off. Now, he's not out flexing. David's like, oh, come on. It's as absurd as a sheep doing that, right? Imagine a sheep flexing in front of a predator. Ooh. David's not trying to out-volume the giant. He's not lowering his voice. Oh, yeah. David's got his regular vocals, just making an announcement. Your head is coming off today. I'm going to take your head off. Yep, going to take off your head. David, thou comest to me with a sword and spear, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day the Lord will deliver thee into mine hands, and me, little David, I will smite thee. It doesn't sound intimidating. It doesn't send a chill, ooh, like Goliath. Like, oh my, what have I gotten myself into? I will smite thee and take thy head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. All this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's. It's Yahweh's. He uses the name. And he will give you into our hands. Well, it came to pass when the Philistine arose. Look at this. When the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. Now, I understand only because I was sitting beside a guy on an airplane who was watching the House of David series and the depiction. Stupid. What little I saw of it was stupid, poorly portrayed. David wasn't going to run up there and get close enough to be grabbed by the mutant that already said, I'm going to pull you apart. I suggest to you that the giant really flipped his lid. Really did. He literally took his helmet off and threw it down. Get over here! And he goes running after. He goes running, moving quickly toward David. And David doesn't shrink back, and he doesn't stand there. David does what he has done many times before. And he does math. He measures the distance, and he knows what is the optimal distance for a stone out of his sling. And his objective is to get up there and close that gap. I love the way this all goes down, and don't let me suggest to you that God wasn't in it when I say to you that this was not David's first sling stone. This was not David's first target. The miracle, true miracle, was the composure that he has to be able to do this without messing this up because of his nerves. The peace that he has, the absolute assurity that God is on his side. All right, now, lots of preachers want to preach a whole sermon on why David had 5 smooth stones. Well, they assume much. And they will go on and on about how Goliath has brothers and he was going to line them all up. I don't think they were there. They would all die later by men who were inspired by David's faith. No, I think David figured, well, I think 5 will do it. If it takes longer than that, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So he just grabbed 5 smooth stones. Now, why do you want a smooth stone? Well, it's all about aerodynamics. You want a smooth stone because a smooth stone is going where you send it. You don't want a stone that's flat on one side and messes up the aerodynamics. No, there's a lot at stake with this. Do not overlook the fact that David selected the projectiles himself from the creek in the valley of Elah. And he chose his projectiles based on their smoothness. Are you listening to me? Based on the smoothness, based on the shape of the rock, that he can have absolute confidence that when he lets it go, it's going where he sends it. You and I, dear brothers and sisters, have been invited by God into a spiritual fight. And we're also told by the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 6 that we can actually yield the members of our body, as the King James Version says, instruments of righteousness. Literally translated, it's weapons of righteousness. Your smile, your hands, your feet, your voice, the members of your body, this equipment that you have to serve the Lord with can actually be used as a weapon. I tell you, when you speak God's word, your voice becomes a weapon. When you share that which is encouraging, that the Spirit of God has placed in your heart to lift someone, to edify them, you have, at the same time you've edified them, you've slashed and hacked some entity that was there trying to bring them down. We can present our bodies as instruments of righteousness unto God, weapons. What kind of weapon do you want to be? You want to be the kind that goes where it's sent? You want to be the kind of projectile that goes where the shepherd slings it? It seems to me that we have some degree of choice in this. We can cooperate with what God is doing. That we can actually be the kind of people that he can use. Well, David, he's closing the gap. David did, in fact, do the necessary math so that he could run in that direction and know right where to be while the giant is moving toward him. And I say to you again, the giant wanted to wrestle. David wasn't going to wrestle him. David was going to shoot him. That's what he did. Shot him in the head, as a matter of fact. David runs up to the mutant who's going, come over here, and he walks up and he goes, bang! Only he does it with a sling. Same deal, he threw a projectile. And I have to believe that the overconfident, mentally unstable Goliath had an unprotected head because he had thrown his helmet down. That's just how I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. David, verse 45, he put his hand in his bag, and he took thence a stone and slang it. I like that, Old English. He slang it, that's what he did. He didn't sling it, he sang it. He slinged it. And it smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David, and therefore David ran, and I bet he really sprinted then. He ran, and he stood upon the Philistine and took the sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof and slew him. So do you get the impression from that David had to actually finish him off? That the giant was put down, he was incapacitated, but he wasn't dead until David used the giant's own sword to provide the disconnection. Death, well, that's what separation is. Death is separation. And a mutant couldn't be any deader than when his head has been separated from the rest of his hulking, mutant, ugly body. So David, think about this. I do happen to actually believe, I probably said this to you before, but I believe that giant went down and had a stupid look frozen on his face, a look of total surprise. and it stayed there. He is helpless as David stands on him and brings his own blade down on him. Man, I wish I loved this story. You know, it's probably insensitive to giants. The story is probably insensitive to mutants. Probably not, politically correct. They're a minority, They probably have protected status in Europe already. Canada, for sure. I celebrate this. I celebrate the fact that the giant went down and lost his head. And it was a cute little guy that took it off. It says here, he slew him. Verse 52, the men of Israel. Oh, wait a minute, verse 51. And therefore David ran, stood on the Philistine, took his sword, drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him and cut off his head thereof. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. The men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistine until they come to the valley and the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to, that town, Sheraim, I guess, unto Gath and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem. And he put his armor, that's Goliath's armor, in his tent. Now when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. They don't recognize him as the harpist. I suggest to you that David harped mostly at night when Saul's soul was tormented. Nobody paid any attention to him. He didn't have their attention as a musician. He's got their attention as a head remover. That's what Abner says. I don't really know. Abner says, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, inquire thou whose son the stripling is. And David returned from the slaughter of the Philistines. Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. I love that picture. He's got the head of the Philistine. He carried it in. He did what he said. He actually did what he said. Saul said to him, whose son art thou, young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse the Bethlehemite. So there's chapter 17 for you. Chapter 17. Hey, listen, you guys. Things are looking good for David at this point in the story. I mean, his whole life was interrupted. His life as a shepherd was interrupted by the visit of the prophet. The prophet came and anointed him. And that generated resentment from his brothers. Nevertheless, things started happening right away. Right away. He's invited to their palace. He's invited to be near Saul. How could he not interpret that open door, that invitation, as being the hand of God? Listen to me. David recognized it was the hand of God. David didn't audition. Oh, there wasn't an audition. He just didn't know it was an audition. Some point or another, he's out in a field and somebody came by and goes, you got to hear this kid. David didn't do anything to try to get himself in to this position, to get himself near. He didn't find out that they're looking for a harpist. Hey, that's my thing. Show up, like, I don't know, American Idol with his harp. David didn't volunteer to go. He was sent by his father to the valley of Elah. David was sort of forced into volunteering to kill this giant because nobody else was. Can I point out to you dear brothers and sisters, David is living this adventure. He's not Lord of it. He's not Lord of his own life. All of this was God's doing. And things initially look pretty good. Needless to say, he suddenly becomes, based on the reward for killing this giant, very significant in the nation of Israel. He suddenly becomes a potential in-law to the king. But you guys know the story well enough to know that things are going to turn bad. Somebody's going to push a handle, and all this goodness is going to go circling down a drain. If God were to actually elevate this young champion, now he's a champion, it would have messed him up. If God would have taken him from the valley of Elah to the throne of Israel, he would not be the David that we've come to know and we've come to love. And we would not see faith put on display. And I submit to you that what we're going to see in the rest of David's story is faith. And at times it may not look like the faith you're used to seeing, but it's faith. That David actually believes God, he trusts God, and he leaves things in God's hands. He trusts Yahweh with his life. He is Yahweh's servant. He made himself Saul's servant as well. There will be a chapter ahead. I'll give you this much of a glimpse ahead. David's going to go through a lot of suffering. And it's necessary. At least it seems to be the case. Seems to be the case that suffering is necessary. I know you've probably had your share of it. He's got to go through terrible disappointments. He's got to discover again that God's got his hand on him. God's putting him where he wants him. God, Yahweh, the living God, is in charge of all of this. It will look at times like he's about to die, and in David's own heart, he'll despair. There will come this awful chapter that we all wish didn't actually happen. And that's 2 Samuel chapter 11, the Bathsheba chapter. I want to challenge you to do something. Between now and tomorrow, if you get a minute alone with your Bible, go to 2 Samuel chapter 11 and read it out loud to yourself, all the way to chapter 12, verse 2. Read all of 2 Samuel chapter 11, chapter 12, verse 2. When you do, I challenge you, if you got a Bible highlighter, highlight this one word, or any variation of this one word that you'll find in 2 Samuel chapter 11. The word is sent. Sent. And you'll see it there in a way that you won't see it in any other chapter of David's life. You'll see David sent, and Bathsheba sent, and Joab sent, and then David sent. You see this repeatedly over and over. Chapter 11. There is no other chapter like that of David's life. No other chapter has David sending. I've read them all. I've read them over and over. The wording of chapter 11 is the Spirit of God who inspired the writing, giving us a clue. What in the world happened to David in this chapter, this awful chapter of 2 Samuel chapter 11? Why is he so out of character? Why is he committing such wrongs? Why does his heart seem so hard against the Lord? And the answer you'll find in 2 Samuel chapter 11 in the use of this sent. David sent. David sent. You see, that is the chapter where David temporarily became the Lord of his own life. Instead of trusting himself in the hands of Yahweh, and Yahweh putting him where he wants him, David took charge. It would seem that David took charge of his own destiny, took matters into his own hands, and it's ugly. And I think that will serve as a lesson to you and me. I just want to point out to you before we got to shift gears here. It's time. I want to stay close to the schedule. We all, like him, are guaranteed the same mixture of birth, death, and resurrection of our dreams, our hopes. Faith is relevant to this, especially if God has made promises to you, especially if you have a dream, things that I'm not talking about our carnal, stupid dreams. I'm not talking about those ridiculous, self-centered dreams, but the real ones, the good ones, the ones that come from the Lord, that God might use you. That God might do something great with your life. Those dreams that are born like they are for somebody like David, with a word from heaven. And that word from heaven came into David's life when the prophet Samuel showed up with a horn of oil and said, kneel. And David just obediently knelt and had no idea he was being anointed to be king of God's people. Man. All right. Birth, death, and resurrection are going to happen. You hear God's call and your heart responds and you have hopes, and long before any of those things are actually fulfilled, you're going to suffer. You're going to hurt. And you'll experience a time like David does, where he goes, I'm going to die out here. Surely Saul is going to catch up with me. I'm going to die. He has completely forgotten about the promise. David's not out there in the wilderness of Judea, on the run going, I know it looks bad now. He's not doing that, It may seem like Friday night, but Sunday's on the way. He's not doing any of that pep talk, pep rally hype that preachers do. He doesn't know that this time in the cave Adullam is just his pre-king suffering. He doesn't know as pre-king anything. It looks like he was crazy to have ever believed that God would make him king. Nevertheless, God revives his faith. Yeah, God does. I submit to you that it is Yahweh himself that ultimately makes things happen for David. And I say to you, New Testament brothers and sisters, followers of Jesus Christ, who's the son of David, but he's actually David's creator, who steps into human history, into David's line and fulfillment of the great promise that he makes David, that you, disciples of Christ, servants of the Most High King, you, likewise, you need faith, for you will experience birth, death, and resurrection. You will. And maybe you're going through it now. God has a plan for you. And the smartest thing that every one of us can do is just lay our lives right in his hands. Don't give into the temptation to take matters into your own hands. And that was the deal with Jacob, the patriarch. I wish we had time to go through that whole story. You know the story. It all changed for Jacob at the river Jabbok. He wrestled. And he wrestled with the Lord. And I say to you, God will treat his sons different than his daughters. There's no girls in the Bible wrestling with God or God wrestling with any of his daughters, but he will wrestle with you, man, I'm telling you, and you probably experienced it. You just didn't know it was him that you were wrestling with. He treats his daughters differently. Jacob wrestled. He wrestled all night long with the Lord. And nobody's going for a pin. Jacob is not trying to get a pin on the angel of the Lord. When you read the words, the angel of the Lord, then you didn't know the ultimate angel, the ultimate messenger of the Lord, of Yahweh, is the Son of Yahweh, the Son of God himself. I think it's highly likely that Jacob experienced this Christophany. When it's all said and done, he knew he'd seen the face of God and lived. Met the Lord with Jacob. He goes, hey, what? Let me go. I'm getting out of here. Let me go. And that's his only objective, is to peel this crazy little Jew off of him. He's hanging on. He's going, let me go. It's almost daylight. We've been doing this all night. Let me go. And Jacob says, no, not until you bless me. And it was there that the angel of the Lord says, what is your name? Now we know where Jacob is when the Lord said, what is your name? Because he's been touched. Man, the angel of the Lord did one touch and he's crippled, he's down. He can't even stand, but he's still hanging on. The angel of the Lord says, what is your name? You down there hanging on to my foot. Jacob says, my name is Heel Grabber. See? My name is Heel Grabber. I'm hanging on. I'm living up to my name right now. And the Lord said, not any longer. You'll no more be Heel Grabber. You will no longer be Heel Grabber. You will be Israel. You'll be prince with God. Jacob gets a change in name, and with it a change of identity. I say to you again today, surrender your whole life to the Lord. Put your life in his hands. Believe his word. Respond to his call. He has and he will set you up. He has called you. He has a plan for you. Just respond. All you and I have to do is respond. We spend too much time going, what do I got to do now? What do I do next? Those of you who love the Lord and you're concerned about doing his will, it's good that you seek him for his will, but just relax. You're not going to miss it. The greater danger for us is that we're going to mess it. We're going to get our own hands involved, take matters into our own hands. And usually things don't work so well when we do. All right, please pray with me about this. Father, I thank you for the privilege of being able to share your word with my brothers and sisters, with family. I thank you, Lord, for this family. I thank you for these Kenyans. God, I thank you. Every man, every woman, and every boy, every little girl hearing the story once again read. And I pray that the truths that you, Lord, have delivered today would be received in every one of these hearts. I ask you, help us not to worry. Help us not to hustle. Help us not to take matters into our own hands, but help us, Lord, to actually just have faith that our hearts may just respond to your word. Believe what you've said. And when we take action, may it be the action that you call us to. Lord, bless our meditation on these things. In the name of Christ, our King, amen. Amen.